I don't have kind of like any Superman kind of knockoff thing that I could wear in order to quote unquote play along with the movie that I just saw. I I just decided to wear this. I mean, I kind of look like I'm wearing a Puma Man shirt more than a Superman shirt, but okay, whatever. Okay. I just came back from the latest Superman movie, which is called, well, Superman. That was directed by James Gunn, the guy who gave us Guardians of the Galaxy and some other movies. Okay, I do have a respect to James Gunn into a certain limit. Not all his movies kind of like work. For example, I still give high regards to what was it, Guardians of the Galaxy, but I don't think that he was that great on the Suicide Squad. I'm not very fond of that one. Even the Suicide Squad, we could argue that it was better than Suicide Squad. And well, he decided to take over, to make a movie of Superman, considering that the Snyderverse, the DC universe was dying, because it was really real that, like I predicted it, that Snyderverse was getting worse and worse and worse every single time. Him. And it's because I always warned that it was not gonna work from day one, when they wanted to jump into the cinematic universe, trying to copy the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they wanted to do. They jumped the train a little bit too soon and didn't cook all the ingredients in order to solidify a cinematic universe for the DC universe. But that's kind of like one thing that I had. Now James Gunn decided to go there and decided to take a different direction. But before I go and talk about my opinion on that Superman movie, let me tell you that I do love Superman, although that's not as much as Batman. Although I do have kind of like a higher respect, with mostly on the classic appeal of Superman as a symbol of a heroic Boy Scout, as much as I can say. I watched some classic, and also I saw some imitators, and even from children's cartoons like Amperman and Yenda Kamen, which are kind of like children-based Superman rhetoric, but it kind of kept some of the inspiration of the goodwill of Superman gave. Which also, some of the goodwill is also influenced in some of their cartoons, like One Punch Man and so on. Even Mighty Mouse, now that it comes into my head. But I still do have some fun things about it. I grew up with the Max Fleischer cartoon shorts. I saw some bits of some of the series, of course. With the one that I knew Superman also from the Super Friends, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I do love the Superman movie, the one with Christopher Reeve. That's kind of undeniable. Although Superman 2 can get a little bit, how can I say, faulty here and there. Although, to be fair, I never saw the Richard Donner cut. Now it gives me curiosity to watch what are the difference here and there. Superman 3 is awful, but I can tell that there is a semblance of a corny guilty pleasure because of how corny that movie is. Although as bad as that movie was, I will give it credit that I do love kind of like the juncture battle scene between Superman and Clark Kent. And then Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, I saw how preachy and idiotic it is, although it also kind of like a riffable movie, in which you can see where some of the bad aspects, you can tell. Superman Return. I remember I saw it once and I was like, okay. Although many people don't have very fond memories about that one, so I can't. I did one. I might have a curiosity to revisit it, but part of me was like, why should I bother? And Man of Steel suck. That's when people from the Snyderverse, they just it just went on. The Zack Snyder and still to this day, people battle if this movie was good or not. For me, it sucked, mostly because of the whole handling of Jonathan Kent. He was a terrible father. He doesn't appreciate life, and because I'm gonna commit suicide just to give a point, but he doesn't give any point. I hated that, and I really despise that. And the less we talk about Batman v Superman, the better it is. That movie was atrocious. And of course, the Justice League. Either when you go with the Joss Whedon version or the Zack Snyder cut version, both of them suck. Both of them suck. Even though the Zack Snyder cut version is a little bit better, but it's a disgrace. And from this point on, the last time we saw Superman was making a cameo in Black Adam. It went nowhere because you really saw that the foundation of the Snyderverse DC universe it was chaotic. It doesn't hold. It doesn't hold because you can tell that it was, like I said, it had a bad start, and it's obvious that the foundation is gonna collapse immediately. So they decided to reboot the whole thing with James Gunn, and I was kind of like cautiously optimistic, but I wasn't gonna give him the whole over like people come to praise James Gunn by saying he's a master and all this stuff, but just because he's really good at his craft doesn't mean that he's gonna take a blunder once in a while. I mean, he can fail. He's still a human being. He's not perfect. So I was kind of like, I respect him, but I was kind of like cautious. And then the trailer came, and there was something that I liked, but there was kind of like something that I didn't like, and I'll get to that just in case. But still, I was kind of like crossing fingers. Although then the second or third trailer came, and it showed more promise. So I had this faith that it was gonna be better and treated better than what Zack Snyder did. And I am, with the things that I'm saying, I am betting that many of those Zack Snyder fans are gonna put daggers on me. And you know what? I don't blame you. You can like whatever you want, but I'm not a fan of Zack Snyder except when he make kind of like the remake of Dawn of the Dead. That's actually one of his most competent movies. Or 300. Okay, those two. But now, well, like usual, I went to the cheaper Tuesday matinees, and boy, that they really want to push those AMC a-holes, because they charge you $1 extra from the normal prices. This is insane. Although you can tell that AMC is desperate because this discount they also I heard that they expanded not only for Tuesday but also on Wednesdays, because they just want to bring people in it. Okay, maybe it works because it's less than $10 at least, but that's not saying much. It's still you can still that there's something shady on it. What is with me that during the course of kind of like 3 vlogs, I've been ranting on AMC a lot. Maybe there's a problem with me. Okay, but anyway, I went to see Superman. I've been hearing the mixed reviews about it, but I didn't hear anything about it because I just wanted to go with blind expectations. And guess what? I had fun. I will say that for the best praise I can say, the James Gunn Superman movie is actually good. It has problems, yeah, but the problems is something that it's shown that it needed some polish because there are some tones and some of the pacing you can tell that it has some messy stuff, and also there's some problematic stuff here and there. And also, let's have James Gunn don't open his mouth when he's about expectation about this movie because it will trigger some people. But either way, this was fun. It was dumb fun, but it was much better dumb fun than Jurassic World gave me last week. So I came out, enjoying it, especially in the sense that I really did felt that I did watch a Superman movie more than what Zack Snyder could have done. I mean, even that Superman musical feels more like a Superman movie more than any of the Zack Snyder movies. Okay, I'm gonna try to not rant on Zack Snyder because I can see some daggers kind of like going through my, piercing through my some dad. I just can't help it. I don't know. It's kind of like a little bit too easy to make fun of, which is funny because I don't know if it's a sheer coincidence, but the week that this Superman movie came out, this Rick and Morty episode came out, in which it had James Gunn in it playing the villain, and there's also a cameo with Zack Snyder. And man, it was kind of like ludicrous. So yeah, in itself, I enjoyed for the movie for what it is, but I can point out that there's still some problems that I can say that it, in a way, it kind of marred a little bit the execution of the movie, but more than it's more like having a little bit of doubts in it. So we all know Superman. And you know what? James Gunn apparently he knows that everybody knows the Superman. So it was almost like he said, you know what? We know a lot Superman, so let's not make this movie an origin movie like anyone will have expected. And you know what? Fair game. We kind of comes in kind of like in a sense that we already know the origin of Superman, and he only needed to start the movie in which the origin of the movie is just gonna put it in text. That's it. Also, it's a little bit of a pretentious text, like for example, using 3,000 years ago, something happened on the planet of Krypton. Then 300 hours later, it happened this. Then Clark Kent turned 30, and then in 3 hours, and then in 3 months he did this, and the news spread and stayed like 3 days, and then in 3 hours this happened, and then 3 minutes Superman is defeated. They kind of have this obsession with the number 3, more like this video game who has this obsession with the number 9. But basically, it shows that it doesn't need a kind of like a backstory, because it's almost like it knows, but this, in a way, it also is a double-edged sword, because since this is kind of like a new universe, it kind of feels a little bit pretentious, and it doesn't help for the people who just get into it. I heard of someone that he did said that James Gunn tries to replicate the feeling when you are a newcomer and you just open a comic book and then you are kind of like in the middle of it and that's it. But here's the difference. In the movies are a little bit more easy to pick, unlike comics the comics have kind of like 90 or 90, a little bit less, maybe 50 years of issues going in, and it's kind of like a bigger storyline. So that's kind of like a difference, and still people might get lost. And movie doesn't have kind of like this prestige, but okay, let's call it kind of like experimental. But basically, yeah, we know all this. So we know who Superman is. We know who Lois Lane is. We know who Jimmy Olsen is. We know Daily Planet, so on, so on. We know who Lex Luthor is. But oh yeah, and also it brought Crypto the Superdog. So basically, the main premise is that Superman stopped this kind of like this dictator from a fictitious Arab world from war, and apparently that brought sparks against almost everyone. And then Lex Luthor decide to take the chance to bring his newest creation with this kind of like this kind of superheroic machine called Ultraman. I'm just trying to explain the best as I can. And then he infiltrates the Palace of Solitude, and basically he just puts dirt on Superman, saying that that Superman came here to conquer the world, and I'll get to that. But in the meantime, of course, Superman is having kind of like his own moral questioning, in which he's kind of questioning if what he's done right, what it means to be a hero from another planet, and so on, so on. Some politics are kind of like mixed into it. I'll get to that eventually, but it's kind of like the typical Superman movie, in which is Superman kind of dealing with the public distrust, and then of course Lex Luthor exploits it in order to that this guy is kind of like this egomaniac who he doesn't care about anyone as long as he showcases that he's the most intelligent person in the world with his own company, his riches, and all this stuff. He's kind of like the ultimate corporate evil guy. And honestly, that's basically the nature of Lex Luthor. And of course, then they mix in some that Lex Luthor built this pocket dimension, and then the Justice League is involved into it, and that's basically the whole thing. This is why, for me, describing superhero movies is a little bit more complicated. And this is where, story-wise, I can see where people call it a mess, because especially during the first because the movie doesn't have basically an Act 1, and it wanted to use shortcuts, kind of like mental shortcuts, to build that, saying that this universe is already established and all these things. It didn't set up its own universe per se. It just keeps saying that it's already there. It's almost like psychologically manipulative, and I can see why he was doing it, because he didn't want to make another origin story, and in a way it works in both positive but also negative, in a way that this is why the kind of like the first act, it kind of takes some people who are familiar with the Superman mythos to familiarize about what's going on, but not everything feels kind of like established. You just have to go with the notion that it's almost like me if I find kind of like a group they're talking about someone, and then I just go and then I just gradually begin to listen to them in order to at least get some gist about what's going on. And some things work, some things doesn't, but it doesn't feel kind of like it's kind of like cemented, and it kind of feels a little bit too dependent that fans just did their homework and just watched it. But now that I think about it, this is sometimes why some of those direct to video DC cartoons, they also have that kind of shortcut, and this kind of makes me question if this is kind of legit or not, I'll say. let's go a little bit with the acting, I'll say. Like the guy who plays Superman, played by Darren Corenswet, I gotta agree that he was pretty good as Superman, and the acting is actually one of the solid foundation that this movie has. The guy did a great job as Superman. I know that people always want to compare, who was kind of like the best Superman, and they always come with Christopher Reeve at the top. And yeah, it's hard to top Christopher Reeve, but let's give it credit to him. And just in case, I do, of course, kind of like would love to criticize the Zack Snyder universe. I will say that Henry Cavill as Superman is not a bad thing, because he was actually one of the good things that the Snyderverse had. But back to David Corenswet, I really like him. Not only his acting but also the portrayal of Superman, and because instead of kind of making it kind of like an emo Superman, it really showcased that James Gunn did understand him. He's basically the Man of Steel. He tries to make good, even when people kind of disses him, and he has his own. He's both super, but also he's a sweetheart. He's the ultimate Boy Scout, and he has a strong sense of justice. I really love when they keep that thing from Superman, and this is why I really like when they have super heroic moments, and they keep on saying that they're doing the right thing even when the world is against them. And it's almost like this is why it inspired characters like Saitama from One Punch Man, and of course we got who plays Rachel Brosnahan. She plays Lois Lane. She's one of the better Lois Lanes in this movie, I'll say. There is kind of like a great scene in which it shows both the dynamic of the actors and the characters, and it's when Lois decides to interview Superman. Although in this universe, I think that it's also happened in the comics. Lois already knows that Superman is that Clark Kent is Superman. Unlike, Man of Steel, where everybody knows that Clark Kent is Superman. So anyway, there was a scene in which it involved an interview. That one showcased, some not only the good dynamic of these characters, but also the subject at the end, which I think I'm gonna leave this a little bit on somewhere else. I'm gonna talk about. There's also, I'll also say that Nicholas Hoult playing Lex Luthor, he was actually, I gotta say that I was surprised, in which this is kind of like a very more menacing Lex Luthor. No disrespect to Gene Hackman, but I like Gene Hackman's version of Superman, but I gotta admit that I really don't buy it, because it's the wig. I really don't like that wig that he wears during all these movies. But Nicholas Hoult, he really amped to 11 how evil Lex Luthor can be, and he showcased. I mean, he always showcased a little bit over the top, being an envious, megalomaniacal, narcissistic. But in this one, it showcased how inhumane he can be, and really he's kind of like he's evil, and luckily he doesn't even clown around, just like Jesse Eisenberg. You know what? I take it back. Gene Hackman, you can keep the wig, as long as we don't get Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor. He was the worst. Thank you. Now I'm reminded of that. But yeah. Oh, Jesse. I forgot the guy who plays the one in Superman Returns. Although it is very memeable when he goes wrong. Okay. Some other character. Let me see here. we got, of course, Jimmy Olsen, in which, thank goodness, they don't kill him unceremoniously like they did on Man of Steel. Was it Batman versus Superman? Okay, I'm not gonna take out some of the time. Also, here is also a little bit of a negative that I have. I was not a fan of injecting the Justice League in the movie. Oh, excuse me. Justice Gang. They put these characters apparently because they just already established that the universe they are awareness of the meta-humans, but God, honestly, if I want to watch a Justice League movie, I will go watch a Justice League movie, and I didn't sign up for that. I just came here to watch a Superman movie. A Superman movie, oh my God. And I still stand, even after watching the movie, that this movie could have been polished to not have them in the movie. It could be anything else, but I just here for Superman. I didn't want to see the Justice League because this is what I meant, that I don't like when James Gunn tried to use shortcuts in order to establish the universe. Especially they chose Guy Gardner as the Green Lantern. I really didn't like this guy in this movie. I know that it's kind of like his character. I've been hearing about it, but he has this stupid Mo Howard haircut that it looks too silly. The guy who plays him, he looks too old to make me believe that. And the suit is not good. He was a total asshole. And all this made me think that maybe we should apologize Ryan Reynolds for his portrayal as Green Lantern. Then there's Hawkgirl. She's just there, and not to spoil the movie, but she does something so anti-heroic that it breaks the rules of a hero. Even though I don't know if it's kind of like her character, but she was just kind of just there, and you can remove her, and honestly, I don't think that it could matter. But the one that actually takes the spot and is kind of like a little bit more likable is Mr. Terrific. Even though I have no idea who this guy is, but the way he acted, I was even kind of having a little bit of a nerd talk with a friend that I somehow say that maybe this Mr. Terrific and Cyborg will have them blend in, but you wouldn't even notice the difference because they have kind of like the same mentality and the same powers of using technology and all this stuff. And so, but somehow while I was taking a shower in my head, I thought that maybe you could put someone like Richard Pryor in that role and it will be hilarious. Yeah, come on. Of course, Crypto. I have kind of like two spectrums with his portrayal. For one, I really like Crypto's role, even though he was a very, very, very naughty dog. Very naughty. He rarely listens to Superman. He's always, acting, like this dog that causes more destruction than anything. It's kind of like this bad dog kind of thing, and somehow you wonder why you keep him, why he's kind of like the hero of the thing, but it warms you up for a little while. So that was kind of like the biggest selling point of this dog. Although I will say, this Crypto, I'll take this Crypto much, much better than the awful Dwayne Johnson version. But here is where I do have issues with Crypto. He's not played by a real dog. Crypto is 100% CGI. And while I can understand that it's gonna be hard to find a dog that will that encompasses the vision that you're gonna get, and also the whole problem that you're gonna train here or something like that. It kind of also have this double-edged sword that I don't feel it, and there you can notice how fake crypto can look if you kind of have kind of like the keen eye. Like, thankfully, it's not kind of like the worst CGI you can get. It's actually very passable, but I'm just kind of warning you here and there. This is where I come up with with the visuals. That the visuals, of course, is pretty good. Although people are kind of complaining during the first trailer that they have kind of like Superman having this bobblehead kind of thing. Although I don't know if my eyes are feeling, but I didn't notice too much out of it. This is kind of like this is kind of like the thing that I have. The cinematography is good. There was kind of like a scene in which it was a little bit too close up. Not bad. It is vibrant, I'll say, and thankfully that it is colorful enough and not all this grim dark, and when they wanted to imitate Christopher Nolan's kind of style. Some of they did try humor. Some worked, some don't, but thankfully it doesn't go into Joss Whedon territory in which everything has to be humorous and all this stuff. It has this kind of like its time and place. Although you can tell that it is a James Gunn movie in which he wants to incorporate rock pop music in some scenes, but sometimes James Gunn can escape his touch that he gave on Guardians of the Galaxy. Although I will say that it does feel kind of refreshing that they use well some of the iconic what was it? There were some iconic moments. Well, I want to. Okay, I got lost my train of thought, but I remember it. There were some moments in which you can see some remakes of the infamous John Williams Superman theme, because that theme, it really stuck into the head of many people, and it's a great theme. It's really heroic. It really fits. Although, in a way, I kind of wish that they go with the Max Fleischner Superman theme. that will kind of like be kind of like a nice homage into it. Oh, by the way, speaking of homage, there is a cameo of John Cena's Peacemaker. I'll leave it at that. Okay, now we're going to go with some of the story elements and the themes of this is where I can find some faults into it. In ways, it's mostly kind of like the political aspect. I will try to be as subtle as possible without going ruffle any feathers, because things are a little bit too close to what is happening. Considering that there are that Superman should stop a war between two warring countries, because one of them was kind of like tyrannical, wanted to kill people, but people were just criticizing him because he meddled in things that he shouldn't go through because he's an alien from another planet, and Superman has kind of like this morality crisis that it doesn't flesh out too much. But you can tell that it was kind of like part of the movie, and things kind of wraps up a little bit, and it gets connected with the main plot with Lex Luthor, because there's kind of like a conspiracy between Lex Luthor and this president, in which the president kind of looks like he came out from jail, and he kind of looks like the let's say that he looks like what will happen if Rick Sanchez was in a mental asylum. That's the best way I can describe that guy. Which, this whole conversation, it kind of brings up the moment that I just described, in which it has Lois and Superman making this interview in which he wanted to justify what he has done, and there's kind of like the two sides. Lois into the grounded journalistic side, but sometimes also asking the hard question, and Superman maintaining his position that he just stopped kind of like a warmonger, and just he couldn't just leave it aside. He has this power, and he just wants to believe in the good of people and protecting what is righteous. But even when people go against it, and he doesn't, and some people go, and it does, and all this stuff, and you can tell there's some people kind of call him naive, but well, that's basically the righteous thing of Superman, and you can say that it was admirable. None of those. And of course, you kind of understand both sides in a way. Even though personally, I kind of took more Superman's side, but it's mostly out of compassion to him. And then of course, it came probably this moment in which they have to battle this giant monster, in which it was cool and that, but. For me, it is pretty stupid that most of the time it has civilians not running away, but they just stay there taking selfies, or going just standing around and kind of like in the same place. So that kind of bothers me. It bothers me that there's people stupid enough that they just stand there in the middle of this giant monster problem. And they just stand there, or they just stupid enough to just film with their phones and all this stuff. I mean, I can understand that you have some journalistic integrity, but no, probably these are for TikTok or something like that. And then somehow it turns into these media criticism in which Lex Luthor managed to infiltrate the Palace of Solitude in order to hack one of the surviving recordings of Kal-El and Superman's parents, in which they gave out this message that is a little bit broken, telling that he's kind of like a symbol of justice somehow, and then apparently they hack it and they find some hidden information. And they say that he's kind of like an alien there to conquer the world and all this stuff, to breed. All this. You know what? Now that and more in hindsight, I think this is not Superman's parents. I think this is more the Brightburn's parents, because the whole thing reminded me of Brightburn. You know, the other Superman movie in which what will happen is Superman is actually evil. And it was produced by James Gunn. So, the people gullible, they started to believe in that thing, and they began to demonize Superman. And of course, the Justice League, they don't trust him, especially Green Lantern. Oh man, I despise that guy. And they don't even help. They don't even want to help him. The only one who actually had the benefit of the doubt was Mr. Terrific. And and then there's also this pocket dimension. The pocket dimension that it has kind of like this other subplot in which Lex Luthor just wanted to go in. He basically captured Superman, and then he's held on with this another character who is kind of like this Elementor guy. He can also create kryptonite from his own hand and all this stuff. Okay, fine and good and all this stuff, but this is what I meant when the movie has kind of like it's messy, when it wants to cram up too much in one movie, but it doesn't feel kind of like settled or earned, and it was just thinking like, okay, go with the flow, and this movie is kind of like, when you put kind of like your mind together, it can be easily criticized, but at the same time, because it does in a competent way captures the spirit of what a Superman movie should feel like. This is why we kind of tend to be a little bit more forgiving on this. And it has some of the cool action scenes, I gotta say. Yeah, it has some of the cool action moments that we got kind of like the third act. Of the third act, I will say that I got kind of like mixed feeling, because there is a twist that happened on the third act, and the more sometimes I kind of tend to lean that it was a stupid plot point that comes out of nowhere. And also, again, I am not a fan when they inject the Justice League in it. Because I wasn't here for the Justice League. I came here for Superman. So I just want to shake James Gunn and saying that, no, don't use shortcuts. Just make a Superman movie first. No Justice League. Just Superman. Ah, jeez. Alright. Okay, do I feel like I ranted on this movie despite that I like it? Maybe it's fair. Maybe it's fair. Let's say that this was complicated. It was complicated feelings, but at the end of the day, it managed to do what it wanted to accomplish, which is making a feel-good Superman movie, even though you can find the problems here and there. Although granted, I mean the original Richard Donner movies, they're not also that perfect. I'll say even the first Superman movie has its own slew of problems. This one is a little bit too much noticeable, but you can tell that there was some care for Superman. I actually have more care than Man of Steel, and yeah, the political side is a little bit, how can I say, a little bit too close to reality. But I will give it this: it's still treated like a fictional thing, a fictional world, and it doesn't hammer into your head. So I'll say it's a little bit close, but it's more subtle and it doesn't cause us any cringes or something like that. And you know what? Politics is also an element on art. You can tell, even in the most hardcore and just dumb fun, you can tell it is still a tool to build a story, and so I accept that. So maybe if only James Gunn could not say it too much about it, and but I digress. I'll say, but either way, do I recommend it? I'll say yes. Yes, I do recommend it. I do recommend it. It was a good Superman movie, and that was something that I needed from the Man of Steel from a long, long time. And I mean the character, not the, But either way, whatever direction is gonna go with this, I still gotta thank James Gunn for giving me at least a fine, good, super fun time.